Splatoon on the Wii U was one of the most original and inventive third-person multiplayer shooters you could hope to see. So much so that a lot of its flaws could be forgiven, and there were a fair few of them. It was, however, online multiplayer the only way Nintendo could do it. Differently and weirdly, where shooting other people was beneficial because another team having less people makes the game easier on your end, but it wasn't the objective, and it wasn't really where the rewards were. It was all about splattering paint all over the map, and covering as much floor as you could, and whoever covered the most floor won. Most notably, you could be a kid in the game, and also a squid in the game, and you could be a kid, and also you could be a squid. But remember, you could also be a kid and a squid.
You're a kid, you're a squid, 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 you're a kid, you're a...
As a kid, or an inkling, you're squirting ink all over the shop trying to cover as much territory as you can for your team. When you turn into a squid with a press of a button, you're swimming through the ink, refilling your ammunition, and being able to pop out and surprise people as well as cover ground quicker. This is also Splatoon 2. Which is more or less the same game. I mean, it is more or less the same game. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. The original Splatoon was, well, original for one thing, unique, interesting, individual. I loved it a lot. But when you do a sequel and it's more or less the same game, the flaws that were evident the first time around might be a bit less forgivable, and that's the issue that Splatoon 2 finds itself in. First things first, Splatoon 2, still fundamentally a bloody good game. I'm still enamored with the idea of a non-violent multiplayer shooter. That's still a really clever idea to me. I like that it rewards you for doing more than just killing people, that you're actually racking up score by covering the floor in your particular colour of paint, which is still very, very satisfying to do. There's something immediately gratifying about covering the floor and racking up points, and it's still heartbreaking as bloody hell to witness all of your lovely paintwork being undone by some bastard on the other team who's running around splashing everywhere you just got done covering. As always, there are a variety of weapons with which to splash the world. You can use the paint roller if you like to walk around a lot, as well as various automatic weapons. I personally like the aero sprays myself, but the dualies, your dual-wielding pistols that allow inklings to dodge roll, that's pretty cool as well. There are your obligatory sniper rifles as well, if you really want them. And then there's the slosher, which is a bucket of paint. You can splash it about. It's quite fun to use. Also, it's called a slosher, which is just amusing. As usual, you need to play regular battles for ages until you reach rank 10, at which point you can try different game types like Rainmaker, which is about more than just covering the floor. It's about seizing objectives and things like that, but you don't get that variety until you've played enough to get to level 10, which can take quite a while, especially if you're stuck on a team of idiots while you're being the best player, which pretty much every game I'm in. And that's where we come to the first apparent flaw of Splatoon 2. I've done this already. I got to level 10 in the first Splatoon. I've done these regular battles over and over and over again. I already had to save up money and level up in order to get cool gear last time. And yeah, I know you start from the beginning with most sequels, but it's so much more apparent here because, again, it feels so similar. I've gone through this system where you can only play 2 maps at a time and it cycles in and out at regular intervals, almost as a way to ensure that players don't see everything too quick, because very much like in the first game, this has been released with a modicum of content that will be expanded upon later, similar to a sort of early access situation. All of those criticisms I've just pointed out were more forgivable in the first game because of how, to use the game's own phrasing, fresh everything was. Everything this time around feels like I've been there and done it. Even the single-player mode, which again has us rescuing the great zapfish from the evil octopus ones, is more or less the same. There are some new gimmicks, there are some extra puzzles, the bosses are still quite fun, but you're yet again going through these architecturally arbitrary platform levels that don't really feel like they belong in any believable world or context. Also, it's faintly ridiculous that the lobby screen still doesn't let you do anything. While you're waiting for a match to begin, you can't change weapons. If you decide to continue from one match to the next, you can't switch weapons out in between. There are 8 buttons on the controller, whichever control scheme you use, there are 8 buttons dedicated to making funny noises in the lobby for yourself. You can press a button to hear the game go mwop 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 mwop, and press another one to hear it go mwop 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 mwop. There are 8 buttons that do different noises, but I can't switch my weapon between matches. Also prevalent is Nintendo's insistence on everybody doing everything to their own weird tune. You see, we have to rewrite our schedules to fit them. So a brand new mode, Salmon Run, which is a 4-player cooperative, horde-like wave-based mode, can only be played when the game decides you can play it. When you go, seriously, when you go to try and select that mode, sometimes the area is just closed. It's boarded up, shut off, you can't go through. It's these bafflingly pointless hoops that just make me marvel at some of Nintendo's design decisions sometimes. These people who are capable of creating amazing games, hamstringing them with some of the most bizarre, arcane ideas I've ever seen. And it's a shame, because when you actually get into it, Salmon Run's quite good. I'm not too fond of the fact that it forces you to use certain weapons at certain times, and those weapons get switched between players at the end of every wave. I'd much rather choose my own, because if you get a selection of weapons that you're not too fond of, and that's the time that Salmon Run's open, you're kinda screwed and you have to live with it. Nevertheless, it's a well thought out little thing. It's a nice distraction when you want to break from the single player or the regular multiplayer. It's fun to go in there and just hang out with randoms or local friends and squirt at a bunch of AI controlled fish monsters. You've got to collect pearls and bring them back to a base, and you've got to get a certain amount before the time's up, otherwise you fail. You failure. Actually, they're not pearls, they're eggs. I've enjoyed Splatoon 2 using all of the different control schemes, be it a Pro Controller, the Joy-Cons, or in handheld mode. I found all of them quite suitable. I personally use motion controls, although I fully understand why some people wouldn't want to. Even so, the motion controls don't feel quite so accurate. They don't feel quite as good as they did on Wii U. Something about it always feels ever so slightly off. Like I'm always slightly off target, even though I've got someone dead center. Since this is mostly a game about splashing ink everywhere, it's not a prevalent problem, but when you're in the middle of a pitched firefight, an actual one-on-one battle, sometimes it can be a little bit frustrating to see the reticle sliding about and sometimes snapping onto targets in weird ways and snapping away again. That said, I'm impressed by how it feels in a handheld capacity. I thought trying to play a game like this in a handheld mode would be terrible, and that I'd have an awful time, but like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I was pleasantly surprised that I can be competitive and have fun, and just feel like I'm playing the game on par with everybody else while I'm playing it handheld, even if other people may be using controllers. But again, it's a game about wildly splashing ink everywhere, so it's not like you've got to be super accurate. Splatoon's quirky soundtrack is back, and it brings all the quirks you could expect, and it looks quite gorgeous. Playing it on an HD TV is especially nice because of the bright clashing colours, but something I wish more games would do. They always go dark, don't they? They always go dark. Yet the clashing colours look great in HD. No one learned that lesson. Which brings us to the assessment of this game. Now, had they just remastered the original Splatoon and put it on the Switch, they could have justified that. It's an upgrade from the last thing. It would have been like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. You know, we've made this more pretty, we've thrown in a couple more weapons, there you go. So the question comes, do we criticize this for not being new enough when the Switch to the Switch could have potentially justified simply re-releasing the original game? Rather than do that, they re-released the original core of that game and called it Splatoon 2. Obviously gave it some extra stuff, but they called it Splatoon 2, and it is, at its heart, Splatoon. I say it's one of those they've gotten away with it this time scenarios. The hardware jump and the prettiness that brings with it, plus the Switch's unique selling features, are enough to justify another Splatoon without too many changes made. However, if they pull this a third time, then they're really gonna be hard to forgive. And even then, Splatoon 2 lacks a lot of the wow factor the original Splatoon had, simply for the fact that how can you have the original wow factor when it's already been spent? We've already had our first introduction to Splatoon, it was a really, really great time, and this is more of it, which is good. Thumbs up, hooray, I'm all for more Splatoon, I'm just not as into it as I was before. Like, I struggled to make myself get to level 10 because of that feeling of, well, I've already done this. I've already gone through, I've proved myself already. And I simply cannot be invested like I was before because it didn't, again, to use the game's own phrasing, stay fresh. If you have a Nintendo Switch, Splatoon 2 is absolutely worth picking up. If you didn't play the original Splatoon, I have a feeling you're gonna love this one a lot more than I did. And that said, I liked it a lot. I liked it a damn lot. It's a good game. It's still built on the same solid premise of the original, but lacking that dazzle of the first experience. The problems inherent in Splatoon's more strange and arbitrary design features are just so much more apparent. Also, what the fuck are they smoking with doing a chat app on a mobile phone? What the f-
You're a kid,